the great 99.
We're gonna miss you, Wayne Gretzky.
Saying goodbye to a Canadian hero. Day 26, the crisis in Kosovo. Is this evidence of mass murder? NATO turns up the heat, but are the airstrikes getting the job done? And will the megacity come to a grinding halt?
CTV News with Sandy Rinaldo.
Good evening. From Mississauga to Moscow tonight, the whole hockey world is speaking the language of Gretzky. It is a last hurrah for an athlete hailed as a master of his craft, a celebration of sportsmanship. Wayne Gretzky packed Madison Square Garden for his final NHL appearance. League stars and functionaries were there to share the spotlight. But as CTV's Tom Walters reports from New York, as always with Gretzky, the moment belonged to the fans. Tom?
Well, in the Big Apple, it was certainly the big ticket today, Sandy. Scalpers were charging up to $500 a ticket. But for many, it was a small price to pay for a bit of hockey history.
They came from Ottawa and got tickets.
This is the way we can say thank you to Wayne.
He came from Toronto and can't find a ticket.
It's going to be hard. It's very difficult to get one.
She came from Halifax, had tickets, but needed to get Kleenex.
I've been seeing little snips on the TV of things, and I've been crying for 2 days.
Crying about the end of the greatest career in hockey. It was an event that drew former teammates like Mark Messier and former rivals like Mario Lemieux. Bryan Adams sang the Canadian anthem, and even that was extraordinary.
We're gonna miss you, Wayne Gretzky.
And the NHL retired Wayne Gretzky's number 99. No team can use it now.
Words can't describe. I mean, when this gentleman, 1977, told me to wear the sweater, I didn't expect one day that they wouldn't let anybody else wear it again.
In the game, yes, there was a game, Gretzky got his final NHL point. An assist on a goal by teammate Brian Leach. And as the seconds ticked down, a timeout as thousands of cheering New Yorkers got to their feet.
They stopped the game, Mike.
That's when it really hit me that I was done. I looked up and I said, my goodness, I got 30 seconds to go.
The game was decided in overtime on a goal by Pittsburgh's Jaromir Jagr, who apologized to Gretzky. The skates gone forever, Gretzky wore sandals to a post-game press conference, looking more relaxed than he has all week.
Friday, I was emotional. I had a good cry at home on Friday before I went, and it's hard to get up and tell the world you're leaving.
Even if leaving does come with encores and ovations for a singular talent and a team player. As New Yorkers cheered him back onto the ice for a third time, he beckoned his team to skate around with him. Applauded by his own and by his opponents, he left the game as gracefully as he played it.
Hockey, of course, will go on without Wayne Gretzky. There are still playoffs, still a Stanley Cup to be won. But for many fans, this season and some part of the game itself ended today. Sandy?
Tom, after the accolades and the adulation, how does a superstar, a hockey legend, become just plain Wayne?
Well, he certainly leaves the game financially comfortable. He has made no decisions, or at least none that he's prepared to announce, about what business ventures he may get involved in, or even where he and his family intend to make their permanent home. But in terms of the personal adjustment, it was revealing to see how relaxed he appeared at the news conference today. He really did appear to be a man at peace with his decision.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Sandy.
And we'll have more on Wayne Gretzky later in the newscast, but first, the growing crisis in Kosovo and some of the day's main developments. There is new evidence of war crimes and mass graves in Kosovo. NATO says ground troops remain an option, though right now it's not part of the plan. And black smoke hangs over Belgrade after NATO air raids smash an industrial area. NATO says it's strangling the Yugoslav war machine, cutting off the flow of its lifeblood, oil. Without it, the tanks, the trucks, the troops can't move. A major oil refinery, the one at Pančevo, has now been knocked out. With more on NATO's onslaught, we're joined by CTV's Alan Fryer. Alan?
Sandy, it's been a busy day and night for NATO pilots, but still serious questions about how much good all those bombs are really doing. NATO says the past 24 hours have been the most intensive of the campaign, 500 bombing missions flown.
His military generally is being weakened while our air campaign is strengthening.
But it hasn't stopped the ethnic cleansing. If anything, it's intensified it. Civilians streaming out of Kosovo at the rate of 1,000 every hour. One family never made it. Their car, which swerved off the road near the Albanian border, blown up by a landmine the Serbs had laid. 3 children, their mother and grandmother, all killed. Inside Kosovo, more evidence of mass killings. NATO says it now knows of 43 mass graves like this one. Young ethnic Albanian men executed, their countrymen forced to bury them.
There have been numerous refugee reports of the Serb police assembling Kosovar Albanians into grave-digging chain gangs.
Propaganda, insist the Serbs, all propaganda.
There is no killing, no raping, no depriving of anybody of any human or national minority or citizens' rights.
Still, one reality no one disputes, it won't be long until Kosovo has been emptied of ethnic Albanians. A reality NATO smart bombs have been unable to alter.
Things are going even more poorly than one would have predicted.
And so mounting pressure now for NATO ground troops, an invasion force, to finish the job.
If the moment comes that is necessary, I'm sure the countries that belong to NATO is ready to do it.
But the official NATO line still is that ground troops won't be necessary, that Serb forces can be dislodged with air power only. But as one skeptical analyst put it, never in the history of modern warfare has a soldier surrendered to an airplane. Sandy?
Thanks, Alan. CTV's Alan Fryer in Washington. Brushing aside the doubts, NATO says it is getting the job done. This weekend, dozens of targets were hit, including the huge oil refinery near Belgrade. The plant was turned into a giant fireball, so huge firefighters were held at bay. The complex was still burning this morning and still sending columns of thick smoke into the sky. Yugoslav officials denounced the attack, calling it unjustified and criminal. Tonight, across Yugoslavia, the familiar sounds of war, the air raid sirens, the bombs exploding, and the growing terror of ordinary people. CTV's Tom Clark spent a day with one family living through the Blitz. A reminder that Tom's movements and his words are monitored.
It's a game where the children have to negotiate an ever-changing set of patterns. Make one mistake, and you're out. 14-year-old Anya and her 5-year-old brother Damien used to play with their friends down the street at the park. But for the past month, since the air raid started, the schools have been closed, and now this is as far as they go, a concrete terrace in front of their house. This is the other part of their world, the inside of their 2-bedroom house. The windows are taped and the blinds down, she says, to protect against flying glass if a bomb falls near the house. Here's where she slept before the war. She doesn't use her bedroom anymore. The family spends most of their time on the main floor, at least during the day. The air raid sirens in Belgrade usually sound shortly after 8 p.m. That's when Anya and her family head to a different world. The basement, the best they can do for a bomb shelter. When she hears the bombs, Anya says that she doesn't know what to do or where to hide. The sound is awful. Her mother, Branka, says she doesn't want her children to see her cry. But Damien sensed that something was wrong and tried to comfort her. She doesn't tell her children much about the war, doesn't say who's to blame, just that it will be over soon. Anya doesn't understand the politics of the war, and each night she has the same dream. I dream, she says, that when I wake up, all of this will be over, and life will be back to the way it was. Tom Clark, CTV News, Belgrade.
Some of those bombs falling on Yugoslavia are being dropped by Canadians, and that's a new role for our men-at-arms. Soldiers more accustomed to being saluted for their peacekeeping skills. In this exclusive report, CTV's Joy Malbon talks to some of our airmen at Aviano about their mission.
Behind the Italian Alps, Canada's fighter jets are ready to take off from Aviano Air Force Base. Fully armed with 500-pound bombs, it's a lethal cargo.
Canadians dropping bombs. You know, if you focus right on that, I suppose that is something different. It's not something that we're used to.
This pilot, who can't be shown for security reasons, admits dropping bombs doesn't rest easily on his mind.
Ultimately, though, this is what Canada has decided needs to be done at a world level, and I'm proud to be part of it. And I carry my head high everywhere I go.
With 12 CF-18 fighter planes and another 6 on the way, it takes some 250 ground crew to back up Canada's top guns. Refueling, rearming, turning the planes around, they work in any kind of weather. And they won't let the pilot anywhere near the plane until they're 100% sure it's ready to fly. The hardest part of each day, waiting, hoping their pilots make it back safely.
It's just a slight relief. The pilots give us a quick debrief. There's no big hurrah because this is the real thing.
The real thing's taken seriously by every Canadian here. Sure, they yuck it up when there's downtime, but the threat out there isn't lost on anyone.
Everybody probably has the question in their mind which is, does the gravity of the situation show up in the cockpit? And of course it does. It's the final check.
An end everyone realizes isn't going to come quickly.
I miss my family, and I can't wait to get home. And I'll be home as soon as I possibly can be.
This may not be home, but the base and each other are the closest thing they've got for now. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Aviano.
Still to come, tonight's news on the brink of traffic chaos. Will a transit strike derail Canada's biggest city? Also ahead, on the trail of a wanted man, Gold Hawk fights back. Canada's largest city is bracing for a crippling transit strike. Toronto Transit workers are walking off the job effective midnight tonight to back wage demands. As Jennifer Martin reports, the strike threatens to bring chaos to a city that suffers gridlock at the best of times.
This is rush hour traffic in Toronto on a normal day. Things are about to get a lot worse. All the signs are there. The city is rushing head-on into a full transit strike, leaving 800,000 commuters stranded.
Unfortunately, you know, I'm going to have to walk or rollerblade to work. It's probably going to hurt. It's going to really inconvenience me a lot, but I'll have to get used to it, I guess.
Spirit and solidarity are running high in the war room at Union headquarters.
So you got to be down there before 5:30 a.m., all right? Sure, no problem.
7,800 transit workers are to hit the brakes and the bricks as of midnight. The Monday morning rush hour is expected to be morning madness. Police and motorists alike are bracing for gridlock in the streets. There will be a crackdown on parking. Cabs are ready for peak demand, but the wait for a taxi may be more than 2 hours. The union president is holding out for a wage increase of 3% a year for 3 years.
We are very hard and fast on the 3.
But the transit managers are not budging.
I would advise the public to arrange their carpools tonight.
The provincial government could order strikers back to work, but it will be at least a full week of commuter chaos before such an order can be passed. The Premier is urging both sides to go back to the bargaining table. Jennifer Martin, CTV News, Toronto.
Saskatchewan nurses are ending an illegal strike. The walkout virtually shut down the province's healthcare system for 10 days. Premier Roy Romano reached a back-to-work agreement with strikers. It calls for 6% wage hikes plus benefits. Nurses were demanding a 22% wage increase. The strike forced hundreds of patients to seek treatment in neighboring provinces and U.S. border states. Briefly, in other news tonight, damp weather has done nothing to help firefighters in Florida. Wildfires north of Miami continue to burn, fanned by changing winds. Fire crews are back burning to try and slow the flames, which could threaten hydro lines. Thick smoke also forced the closure of a main highway. And controversy continues to follow the Chinese premier on his Canadian tour. Protesters greeted Zhu Rongji's motorcade at Banff National Park today, calling on China to end its occupation of Tibet. Zhu later found a warmer reception at a dinner with Alberta Premier Ralph Klein. Transit buses in Ottawa were rerouted today and had only one destination, a memorial service to remember 4 co-workers gunned down at a bus garage. Thousands of friends and family, widows and co-workers gathered to bid a final public farewell. Memorial candles were lit, and the Prime Minister laid a wreath. They shared prayers and poems.
As my hero, I'll be strong for you because I know that's what you expect.
David LeMay and 3 colleagues were shot and killed April the 6th by a former employee who then turned the gun on himself. We'll be back later with a last look at a hockey legend, but first, no escape from justice.
Please take that out of my face.
In hot pursuit, even when the trail is cold, Goldhawk fights back. A man wanted in a bogus investment scheme long managed to elude the law, but it appears he wasn't able to elude Dale Goldhawk. Acting on information from the Goldhawk team, police tracked down their suspect in Prince Edward Island. With the latest in a story of lies and losses, here is CTV's Dale Goldhawk.
Ian Stanley Anderson, who describes himself as an international venture capitalist, was one of several men investigated by Barrie police. After local residents complained, they spent a total of $85,000 on investments that later disappeared. Police believed that Anderson, who left his home near Barrie before charges were laid against him, was now somewhere on Prince Edward Island. We found him living at this beachfront home in Murray Harbor North, a tiny remote community on Prince Edward Island. We discovered that Anderson also rents an apartment in a residential area of Charlottetown. We caught up with Anderson at a supermarket parking lot.
No, are you?
Please take that out of my face.
It's not in your face, and it's not going on. I'm sorry, it's not going on.
3 weeks later, Anderson was arrested. He spent 6 days in the Charlottetown jail. Then he was moved back to Barrie, where he appears in court to face charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, theft by conversion, and possession of property obtained by crime. Connected to the same case, Philip James Peacock, a Barrie landscaper and used car dealer, faces 19 fraud-related charges. Dale Goldhawk, CTV News, Barrie.
The scandal-plagued Salt Lake City Olympics are losing their first big sponsor. Johnson & Johnson is dropping its $30 million sponsorship of the 2002 Winter Games. The company says its decision is based in part on Olympic organizers' involvement in bribe-taking and other wrongdoing. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and nobody knows that better than a retired bus driver in Montreal. Victor Hebert has spent the last 10 years building a replica of the Vatican in a recycled fuel oil container. The 8x3 mini city is made entirely of popsicle and pogo sticks. He finished today. Hebert has never seen the real thing. He studied pictures of the Vatican and visited museums to clarify some Latin inscriptions. And a family note, we congratulate reporter Avis Favreau and producer Andrew Mitrovica. They picked up the Canadian Association of Journalists' Top Story of the Year award in a national news program. It was for their report on Hospital for Sick Children whistleblower Dr. Nancy Olivieri. And when we return, our final farewell to the conquering hero. Wayne Gretzky is a New Yorker now, but he's still the toast of every hockey town from coast to coast. In taverns and sports bars nationwide tonight, there's a tear in the beer as the fans bid so long.
Gretzky moves up. Beautiful setup.
That's a sad day.
It is a sad thing, though, as Canadians, because he is such an idol for all Canadians.
I'm feeling very remorseful at the moment, very reflective. Thinking about the good times, the real good times here in Edmonton. Man, those were the memories. Those were the days.
the memories, the days, the good times. And so as number 99 bids his sport a final farewell, we'd like to leave you with some of the images of this day in hockey history. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Good night.
+, Millennium Report is brought to you by Chrysler, engineered to be great cars.
Baby boomers who vowed never to grow old are doing just that. By 2015, the number of senior citizens in Canada will double, and a lengthening lifespan means that boomers need to plan, not just for a few years of retirement, but for 20 years or more. Better health care is making 100th birthdays commonplace. For boomers, this could mean they will be retired more years than they work, a situation that is unprecedented. Many, though, could choose to keep working.
Technology is going to allow the baby boomers to have a lot more flexibility than perhaps their parents' generation did. If they want to work part-time, they have the opportunity of hooking up from wherever they happen to be.
And experienced workers could be in demand. Canada's low birth rate is predicted to result in labor shortages as boomers hit retirement age in year 2011. For now, boomers themselves are in the best position to encourage job sharing, part-time and contract work, the types of employment that will suit them in later years. But how many are thinking ahead?
We're not looking after our bodies as well as we should. We're not building our minds the way that we should. We're not looking at the housing needs that we're going to have in 15, 20, 30 years. We're expecting all these things to miraculously appear because someone's looking after them. Well, wake up, baby boomers.
Business is already gearing up to help boomers manage and spend their retirement monies, including $1 trillion inheritance from passing parents. Windfalls aside, most should plan to live on roughly 70% of their current income from government and private pensions. For 9.8 million baby boomers, cost saving during the retirement years could mean sharing large houses or downsizing into plugged-in vehicles where they can keep working part-time while traveling.